Welcome to Agatha Christie Tales. Tonight, we venture into the gilded corridors of diplomatic London, where every smile conceals a secret and every handshake might hide a knife. Hercule Poirot, the renowned Belgian detective, finds himself summoned to a world where murder wears evening dress and speaks in carefully measured phrases. Join us for The Diplomat's Dilemma, a tale of ambition, betrayal, and the poison that lurks beneath polished surfaces, crafted in homage to the masterful Agatha Christie, whose genius we honor, though this mystery unfolds on our own terms. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, where are you joining us from tonight? Your presence illuminates our journey through these shadowed mysteries. Now, let the story unfold. Chapter 1. The Summons. It was the hour when London transforms itself, that peculiar moment between afternoon respectability and evening elegance, when the summons arrived at our flat in Whitehaven Mansions. I had been reading the evening edition, my attention caught by yet another article about rising tensions in the Balkans, when George, Poirot's impeccable valet, entered bearing a silver salver. Upon it rested a cream-colored envelope of exceptional quality, the kind of stationery that whispers of old money and older breeding. "A messenger delivered this, sir," George announced. He stressed the matter was most urgent and awaits a reply in the lobby. Poirot, who had been engaged in the delicate operation of arranging his collection of newspaper clippings into perfect geometric alignment, looked up with mild interest. His egg-shaped head tilted slightly as he examined the envelope without touching it. "The crest, Hastings. You observe it." I leaned forward. Embossed in deep blue upon the envelope's flap was a coat of arms I vaguely recognized. "Foreign Office, isn't it? Or something diplomatic?" "Précisément." Poirot's small, neat fingers extracted the letter with surgical precision. His green eyes, sharp as cut glass, moved across the elegant handwriting within. I watched his expression shift almost imperceptibly, the faintest elevation of one eyebrow betraying heightened interest. "What is it, Poirot?" "A cry for help, mon ami, wrapped in velvet, but a cry nonetheless." He passed me the letter. The handwriting was feminine, controlled yet with slight tremors visible in certain words, fear made manifest in ink. "Dear Monsieur Poirot, I write to you in desperation, for I have nowhere else to turn. My husband, Sir Reginald Blackwood, died 3 days ago. The physicians pronounced it heart failure, a verdict the world has accepted without question. I cannot accept it. I know, though I cannot yet prove, that my husband was murdered. There are forces at work that would prefer. His death remain uninvestigated. Political forces. I am watched, Monsieur Poirot. My letters are read. My telephone calls are monitored, but a widow requesting the assistance of a private detective to settle her late husband's affairs. That surely cannot be denied her. I beg you to come to Blackwood House tomorrow evening. We are hosting a memorial reception. Half of diplomatic London will attend. Among them, I am certain, walks my husband's killer. Please, you are my only hope. Lady Cordelia Blackwood." I set down the letter with a low whistle. Good Lord, she believes someone at the Foreign Office murdered her husband? "She believes someone within her own circle murdered him," Poirot corrected gently. "There is a distinction, Hastings. Sir Reginald Blackwood, the name, it is familiar to you?" I searched my memory. Blackwood. Yes, I've seen it in the papers. Senior diplomatic attaché, wasn't he? Handled negotiations with several European powers. There was talk he might be appointed ambassador to... I stopped, the memory crystallizing. Good heavens, ambassador to France. The announcement was expected any day. And now will never come. Poirot's fingers drummed lightly upon his knee. A man on the threshold of great power dies suddenly of heart failure. His wife believes it murder. She speaks of political forces and surveillance. He shook his head slowly. This is not a simple domestic tragedy, mon ami. This is something far more complex. Will you take the case? For a long moment, Poirot was silent. His eyes had taken on that distant quality I knew so well, the look of the little gray cells beginning their intricate dance. A diplomat, he murmured, is a man who lives by secrets. He knows things that governments wish to hide. He moves between powerful interests like a, how do you say, a tightrope walker. One misstep. He made a small, eloquent gesture. You think he discovered something dangerous? I think, Hastings, that the wife of such a man does not write letters like this without cause. She speaks of being watched. She chooses her words with care. Yet beneath them, I sense genuine terror. Poirot rose from his chair with sudden decision. George, my pen and the good notepaper. We shall accept Lady Blackwood's invitation. The following evening found us in a taxicab, making our way through the rain-slicked streets of Mayfair toward Blackwood House. The weather had turned foul, a persistent drizzle that transformed London's gas lamps into blurred halos of gold against the gathering darkness. Tell me what you know of the Blackwood household, Poirot instructed as we drove. I had spent the afternoon making discreet inquiries through my club. Sir Reginald was 63, married to Lady Cordelia for 31 years. No children. There was a daughter who died in infancy, I believe. He was known as a steady hand, not brilliant, but reliable. Good judgment, they said, the sort who never made enemies. And yet someone, perhaps, wished him dead. His estate passes to his wife, of course. Beyond that, there's a nephew, the Honorable Marcus Blackwood. Young fellow, about 30, works in the Foreign Office himself, actually. Junior, position, but climbing. Poirot's eyebrow rose. The nephew works at the Foreign Office, under the uncle's supervision? In a manner of speaking, different departments, but Sir Reginald certainly had influence over his career. I paused, remembering another piece of gossip. There were rumors, actually, about the nephew and a young woman, the Blackwoods' personal secretary, Miss Helena Cross. Very pretty girl, by all accounts. Some said they were secretly engaged. Interessant? Poirot stroked his magnificent mustache thoughtfully. And Sir Reginald? He approved of this attachment? That's just it. Word was he didn't. Thought the girl unsuitable. There was talk of an ultimatum. Marry her and lose any hope of advancement. Ah, the syllable carried a weight of meaning. Already, Hastings, the web of motive begins to form. A nephew whose career depends on his uncle's goodwill, a forbidden romance, an inheritance. These are the threads from which murder is woven. The cab drew to a halt before an imposing Georgian townhouse. Despite the weather, light blazed from every window, and a steady stream of black motor cars deposited elegantly dressed guests at the front entrance. Footmen with umbrellas stood ready to escort arrivals up the steps. The memorial reception, I observed. Half of diplomatic London, she said. Rather remarkable timing for an investigation. On the contrary, mon ami. Poirot's eyes gleamed in the cab's dim interior. It is perfect. When else might we observe all the suspects together, watch their interactions, See who avoids whom, who watches whom too carefully. He adjusted his hat to a precise angle. The hunter must go where the prey gathers. We ascended the rain-slicked steps and entered a world of restrained opulence. The entrance hall was marble-floored, dominated by a sweeping staircase. Portraits of previous Blackwoods, generations of diplomats and statesmen, gazed down with stern approval. Somewhere deeper in the house, a string quartet played something appropriately somber. A butler of advanced years and impeccable deportment materialized before us. "Monsieur Poirot, Lady Blackwood is expecting you. If you would follow me, she requests a private word before you join the other guests." We were led not to the main reception rooms, but up the staircase and along a corridor hung with more ancestral portraits. The butler paused before a door of polished mahogany. "The small drawing room, sir." He knocked once, then opened the door. "Monsieur Hercule Poirot, my lady." The room was intimate and feminine. Cream wallpaper, watercolors of Italian landscapes, a fire burning low in the grate. But my attention was immediately captured by the woman who rose to greet us. Lady Cordelia Blackwood was perhaps 60, but retained the bone structure of a great beauty. Her silver hair was swept up elegantly, and her mourning dress, black silk, impeccably cut, spoke of Bond Street at its finest. Yet there were shadows beneath. Her blue eyes and her hands, I noticed, were not entirely steady. "Monsieur Poirot." Her voice was low, musical, and tightly controlled. "Thank you for coming. I cannot tell you what it means to me." "Lady Blackwood." Poirot bowed over her extended hand. "My condolences for your loss. This is my friend and colleague, Captain Hastings." She acknowledged me with a gracious nod, then gestured for us to sit. When she spoke again, the careful control slipped slightly. "I must be brief. I'm expected downstairs, and my absence will be noted. They watch me, Monsieur Poirot. Everyone watches everyone in this house now. Tell me what happened to your husband." Lady Blackwood drew a breath. Reginald was working late in his study, as he often did. Important negotiations, he said. He'd been under tremendous strain. At approximately 11 o'clock, I heard him cry out. When I reached him, he was collapsed at his desk, clutching his chest. By the time the doctor arrived, he was dead. "The doctor who attended, he was your regular physician?" "Dr. Edmund Hartley. He's been our family doctor for 20 years. He pronounced it a heart attack without hesitation." Her fingers tightened on the arm of her chair. "But Reginald was in perfect health, Monsieur Poirot. He'd had a complete examination not 3 weeks before. His heart was strong." "And yet doctors are sometimes wrong, madam. The heart, it can fail without warning." "I know what I saw." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "In the days before his death, Reginald was frightened. He received a letter that disturbed him greatly. He would not tell me its contents, but I saw his face when he read it. And he said something strange to me, the very evening he died." Poirot leaned forward almost imperceptibly. "What did he say?" "He said, 'Cordelia, if anything should happen to me, you must not trust appearances. The enemy wears a friendly face.'" Her eyes glistened. And then he was dead. The fire crackled in the silence. "This letter," Poirot said softly. "Do you have it?" "It was gone. I searched his study after the body was removed. His private papers had been disturbed. Someone had been through them." "Someone in the household?" Lady Blackwood hesitated. "The study was locked. Only Reginald had the key. And Marcus. My husband gave his nephew a spare key years ago. for convenience. The nephew who works at the Foreign Office, Poirot mused. The nephew who is perhaps secretly engaged to your secretary against your late husband's wishes. Her sharp intake of breath confirmed his accuracy. You have already been making inquiries. Yes, Monsieur Poirot, Marcus and Helena. Reginald disapproved most strongly. He considered Helena an adventuress, though I've never seen anything but genuine devotion in her manner. And where is Miss Cross now? Downstairs, assisting with the reception. She insisted on continuing her duties despite everything. Lady Blackwood rose, signaling our interview was ending. They're all downstairs, Monsieur Poirot, Marcus, Helena, Dr. Hartley, Sir Charles Pemberton, Reginald's closest colleague at the Foreign Office, who stood to benefit greatly from his advancement, and others, so many others who smiled to his face while perhaps plotting his destruction. She moved to the door, then paused, turning back to us with an expression of fierce determination. Find the truth, Monsieur Poirot. My husband served his country faithfully for 40 years. He deserves justice. Her voice hardened. And I will have it, whatever the cost. Chapter 2. The Embassy Reception. We descended the staircase into a world of crystalline light and murmured condolences. The main reception rooms of Blackwood House had been opened in their entirety. Drawing room flowing into dining room, library doors thrown wide, creating a processional space through which diplomatic London circulated with practiced ease. Black was the dominant color naturally. Black suits, black dresses, black armbands on those gentlemen who had not troubled to change from their day attire. Yet there was nothing funereal about the atmosphere. Champagne circulated on silver trays. The string quartet had shifted to something by Handel, stately, appropriate, but hardly grief-stricken. The air hummed with conversation conducted in the carefully modulated tones of those accustomed to discussing matters of state in crowded rooms. Hastings. Poirot's voice was low. Your impressions? I surveyed the gathering with a soldier's eye for terrain. 60 guests, perhaps 70, mixed ages, more men than women. Everyone seems to know everyone else. Précisément, a closed world, a world of connections and rivalries, alliances and enmities, all hidden beneath a veneer of collegial respect. His green eyes moved methodically across the room. Now, let us see who populates this particular stage. We had barely taken a dozen steps when a young man materialized before us, tall, fair-haired, with the kind of chiseled features that photograph well and the slightly too eager manner of one conscious of being observed. Monsieur Poirot, I'm Marcus Blackwood. My aunt mentioned you'd be coming. His handshake was firm, practiced. Though I confess I'm not entirely certain why she felt the need to consult a... He caught himself. That is, Uncle Reginald's death was tragic, but hardly mysterious. And yet Lady Blackwood believes otherwise. Marcus's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. My aunt is grieving. She cannot accept that a man as vital as my uncle could simply... Stop. It's understandable, surely. Most understandable, Poirot agreed mildly. You were close to your uncle, Monsieur Blackwood? He was like a father to me. The words came smoothly. Too smoothly, I thought. Rehearsed. After my own father died, Uncle Reginald took me under his wing, guided my career. I owe him everything. Including, perhaps, your position at the Foreign Office. A flicker of something crossed Marcus's handsome face. Resentment? Calculation? It was gone before I could identify it. He opened doors, certainly, but I've earned my place through my own merits. I do not doubt it. Poirot's tone remained pleasant. Tell me, when did you last see your uncle alive? The evening he died. We had drinks in his study around 7 o'clock, discussed some matters related to the upcoming French negotiations. Marcus's gaze drifted across the room, then snapped back. He seemed perfectly well, tired perhaps, but nothing unusual. And you left him at what time? 7:30, perhaps 7:45. I had a dinner engagement. He straightened his already perfect tie. Look, Monsieur Poirot, I understand you have a reputation, but this really is a waste of your time. Uncle Reginald's heart gave out. It happens. We're all terribly sad, but there's no mystery here. Then you will not object to answering a few questions. Marcus's jaw tightened. I have guests to attend to. Perhaps we can speak later. He was gone before Poirot could respond, weaving through the crowd with the practiced efficiency of a career diplomat. He is nervous, Poirot observed quietly. He seemed rather keen to dismiss the whole affair. Mais oui. The question is, does he dismiss it because he believes his aunt mistaken, or because he fears what an investigation might uncover? Poirot's attention shifted. Ah, the young lady by the fireplace. She observes Monsieur Marcus with considerable intensity. That, I think, must be Miss Helena Cross. I followed his gaze. The woman standing near the marble fireplace was indeed striking. Early 30s, with dark hair swept back severely and large, intelligent eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Her black dress was simpler than those worn by the society ladies around her, marking her status as staff rather than guest. Yet there was nothing servile in her bearing. She held herself with quiet dignity, watching Marcus Blackwood's progress across the room with an expression I could not quite decipher. Love? Certainly, but something else as well. Fear, perhaps, or warning. Come, Hastings, let us make the acquaintance of the secretary. We approached Miss Cross, who turned at our arrival with the polished attentiveness of one accustomed to managing the needs of important people. Monsieur Poirot. Her voice was low, cultured, educated beyond her station, I thought. Lady Blackwood told me you might wish to speak with me. You are most perceptive, mademoiselle, and observant, I think. You were watching Monsieur Marcus just now. Something flickered in her dark eyes. I watch everyone, Monsieur Poirot. It was part of my job, ensuring Sir Reginald's engagements ran smoothly, anticipating problems before they arose. Old habits. An invaluable skill. Tell me, how long were you employed by Sir Reginald? 4 years. I began as a typist and was promoted to personal secretary 2 years ago. Her chin lifted, slightly. Despite what you may have heard, I earned that position through competence, not through any personal considerations. I have heard nothing, mademoiselle. I ask only questions. Poirot's manner was gentle, unthreatening. You were fond of your employer. I respected him enormously. He was demanding but fair. He expected excellence and rewarded it. She paused. I do not believe his heart simply failed, Monsieur Poirot. He was too strong, too vital. You observed him in the days before his death. Was there anything unusual in his manner? Helena Cross hesitated. I saw her glance toward Marcus, who was now deep in conversation with an elderly gentleman across the room. He was preoccupied, more so than usual, and there was a letter. Poirot went very still. A letter. It arrived 3 days before his death, hand-delivered, not through the post. I didn't see the contents, but I saw his face when he read it. He went pale, actually pale, and his hands shook. Her voice dropped. Sir Reginald never showed fear, Monsieur Poirot. Never. But in that moment he was afraid. Did he say anything? Only that it was nothing, a minor annoyance. But he locked the letter in his desk drawer immediately. And that evening, he asked me to clear his schedule for the following week, said he needed time to think. This desk drawer, do you know where the key was kept? Sir Reginald kept it on his person at all times, on his watch chain. Poirot nodded slowly. And the spare key to the study, the one held by Monsieur Marcus? Helena's expression cooled. I see you've already been informed of the household arrangements. Yes, Marcus has a key. So does the butler, Mr. Thornton, and Lady Blackwood, of course, though she rarely enters the study. Anyone else? No. Sir Reginald was most particular about his privacy. I noticed that her hands, clasped before her, had tightened. Poirot noticed it too. Mademoiselle Cross, he said softly, there is something else, something you have not told me. For a long moment, she was silent. Around us, the reception continued its elegant murmur, champagne glasses clinking, polite laughter, the quartet shifting to Mozart. The night Sir Reginald died, she said finally, her voice barely audible. I saw someone leaving the study. Just after 10 o'clock, I had come back to retrieve a document I'd forgotten, and I saw a figure in the corridor, moving quickly, quietly, toward the servants' stair. You recognized this person? Her eyes met his, and I saw genuine anguish there. I cannot be certain. The corridor was dark, but the figure was tall, slim, fair-haired. She swallowed. It could have been Marcus, or it could have been a dozen other men who matched that description. But you believe it was Marcus. I don't know what I believe. Her composure finally cracked, just slightly. I love him, Monsieur Poirot. We planned to marry, in secret, because Sir Reginald would never approve. But Marcus would never. He couldn't. She stopped, pressing her lips together. You were going to say he could not commit murder, yet you are not certain. I'm certain of nothing anymore. She straightened, visibly gathering herself. Now, if you'll excuse me, I must attend to the guests. She was gone before I could speak, disappearing through a service door that I hadn't noticed. Poor girl, I murmured, caught between love and loyalty. Or caught between truth and self-preservation, Poirot replied thoughtfully. She tells us she saw a figure that might have been Marcus, but she also provides him with a defender. It could have been a dozen other men. Interesting, n'est-ce pas? Before I could respond, we were approached by a florid-faced gentleman of perhaps 60, whose substantial waistcoat strained against its buttons, and whose manner radiated bonhomie like heat from a stove. Poirot, my dear fellow. The voice boomed across the room. Charles Pemberton, heard you might be sniffing around. Dashed awkward, this whole business. Sir Charles. Poirot accepted the handshake. You were a colleague of Sir Reginald? Colleague? I was his bloody competitor, and there's no point pretending otherwise. Pemberton's frankness was startling. We'd been vying for the Paris ambassadorship for 3 years. Now Reggie's dead, and I've got a clear run at it. He shrugged massive shoulders. Doesn't mean I killed him. A remarkably candid admission. I find candor saves time. Yes, I wanted the appointment. Yes, I'm not particularly sorry Reggie's out of the running, but I didn't murder him, and frankly, the suggestion is absurd. We were rivals, not enemies. There's a difference in diplomatic circles. And where were you the evening Sir Reginald died? At my club, White's, playing cards with 3 other members until nearly midnight. My alibi, as you detective chaps say, is unassailable." He grinned, revealing tobacco-stained teeth. "Check with them if you like. Lord Ashworth, Sir Geoffrey Mayne, and young Teddy Winthrop. All impeccable witnesses." "I do not doubt it." Poirot tilted his head. "Tell me, Sir Charles, you knew Sir Reginald well. Had you noticed any change in his manner recently?" Pemberton's joviality faded slightly. "Now you mention it. Yes, the last few weeks, Reggie seemed distracted, worried, kept asking odd questions about old cases, negotiations from years ago, the Marchetti affair specifically." "The Marchetti affair?" "Ancient history. An Italian diplomat who died in suspicious circumstances back in '09. Reggie handled the investigation for the Foreign Office." Pemberton lowered his voice. "It was hushed up, naturally. International sensitivities. But recently, Reggie seemed almost obsessed with it. Asked me if I remembered details, documents, who knew what." He shook his head. "I told him to let sleeping dogs lie. Perhaps I should have listened more carefully." "Perhaps," Poirot agreed quietly. A gong sounded somewhere in the depths of the house, summoning guests to the dining room for the formal tribute. Pemberton excused himself, and we were left momentarily alone in the thinning crowd. "The Marchetti affair," I said. "You think it's connected?" "I think, Hastings, that a man does not become obsessed with the past without reason. Something stirred old memories, old fears, the letter perhaps." Poirot's eyes were distant. "A diplomat who died in suspicious circumstances 15 years ago. An investigation that was hushed up. And now Sir Reginald, who handled that investigation, is himself dead. Good Lord, you think someone's been waiting 15 years for revenge? Revenge or silence?" Poirot's gaze swept the room one final time, taking in the elegant mourners, the glittering chandeliers, the portraits of Blackwood ancestors. "Sir Reginald knew something, Hastings, something dangerous enough to kill for. And somewhere in this room, wearing evening dress and murmuring condolences, stands the person who decided that knowledge must die with him." The gong sounded again. "Come," Poirot said. "Let us join the mourners. There is one more person I wish to observe, the doctor who pronounced Sir Reginald dead, Dr. Edmund Hartley." His mustache twitched. "A family physician of 20 years, Lady Blackwood said. Such a man knows many secrets. The question is whether he is keeping them or hiding them." Chapter 3. Whispers in the drawing room. The dining room of Blackwood House was a testament to Victorian grandeur. Oak-paneled walls, a ceiling painted with classical scenes of gods and heroes, and a table that could comfortably seat 40. Tonight it held perhaps half that number, the guests arranged with careful attention to precedence and protocol. Lady Blackwood sat at the head of the table, pale but composed, receiving murmured condolences with gracious nods. Marcus Blackwood occupied the opposite end, playing host with an ease that struck me as slightly premature. Between them stretched a sea of black-clad diplomats, their wives, and the various functionaries who orbited the Foreign Office like satellites around a distant sun. Poirot and I had been seated midway down the table, close enough to observe, far enough to avoid drawing attention. To my left sat a thin, nervous woman, who introduced herself as Mrs. Pemberton, wife of the florid Sir Charles. To Poirot's right sat an elderly gentleman with a pronounced stoop and watery eyes, who spoke only to comment on the quality of the claret. But it was the man directly across from us who captured my attention. Dr. Edmund Hartley was perhaps 65, with iron-gray hair cropped close to a skull that seemed almost too large for his thin neck. His eyes, behind wire-rimmed spectacles, were pale blue and remarkably steady. He ate little, drank less, and observed the proceedings with the detached interest of a scientist studying specimens. Dr. Hartley. Poirot's voice was pitched low enough to avoid carrying. I believe you attended Sir Reginald in his final moments. The doctor's gaze shifted to Poirot without surprise. I was told you might wish to speak with me, Monsieur Poirot. Lady Blackwood mentioned your involvement. She is concerned about her husband's death. She is grieving. Hartley's tone was clinical, neither warm nor cold. Grief takes many forms. Sometimes it manifests as denial, an inability to accept the natural order of things. You are certain, then, that Sir Reginald's death was natural? Hartley set down his fork with precise movements. I have been a physician for 40 years, Monsieur Poirot. I have seen hundreds of men die. Sir Reginald exhibited all the classic symptoms of acute myocardial infarction: sudden chest pain, difficulty breathing, loss of consciousness, and rapid death. His color, his posture, the expression frozen on his face, all consistent with heart failure. And yet Lady Blackwood tells me her husband was in perfect health, that he had been examined only 3 weeks before his death. Something flickered across Hartley's composed features. I conducted that examination myself. His heart was strong for a man of his age. But strong is not invulnerable. The heart can fail without warning, particularly in men under considerable stress. Sir Reginald was under stress. He was a senior diplomat involved in sensitive negotiations. Of course, he was under stress. Hartley's lips thinned. I warned him to reduce his workload. He ignored my advice, as he always did. You knew him well, then. I have been the Blackwood family physician for 20 years. I delivered their daughter, the one who died in infancy. I attended Lady Blackwood through that tragedy and many smaller ones since. I knew Reginald Blackwood as well as any man outside his immediate family. Poirot nodded slowly. And in your professional opinion, there is no possibility that Sir Reginald's death was assisted? The word hung in the air between them. Around us, the dinner conversation continued, a pleasant murmur of politics and gossip, but in our small sphere, silence reigned. You are asking if he was poisoned. Hartley's voice was flat. I am asking what you observed. The doctor was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped to barely a whisper. There was one thing, something that troubled me at the time, though I dismissed it as irrelevant. Poirot leaned forward almost imperceptibly. Yes? When I arrived, Sir Reginald was already dead, had been dead for perhaps 10 or 15 minutes, based on the progression of rigor mortis. Lady Blackwood was beside herself. The servants were in chaos. In such circumstances, one focuses on the immediate, confirming death, comforting the widow, managing the scene. But something caught your attention. His lips. Hartley's pale eyes met Poirot's. There was a faint residue, a slight discoloration at the corner of his mouth. At the time, I assumed it was from the brandy he had been drinking. The glass was still on his desk, half empty. But now you are not so certain. Now I wonder if I should have looked more closely. The doctor's composure cracked slightly. I signed the death certificate without ordering an autopsy. Lady Blackwood was adamant that her husband's body not be subjected to such indignity, and I saw no reason to insist. His symptoms were consistent with heart failure. There was no evidence of foul play, except the discoloration, which could have been nothing. Hartley's voice hardened. I am a physician, Monsieur Poirot, not a detective. I deal in medical certainties, not suspicions. Sir Reginald's heart failed. That is what I observed. That is what I certified. And the brandy glass, what became of it? I assume it was washed and returned to the cabinet. The servants would have tidied the study the following morning. Poirot sat back, his expression unreadable. Thank you, Dr. Hartley. You have been most helpful. I have told you nothing useful. On the contrary, you have told me that doubt exists, even in your own mind. That is extremely useful indeed. The formal tributes began after dinner, speeches praising Sir Reginald's long service, his dedication to king and country, his skill at navigating the treacherous waters of international diplomacy. Marcus Blackwood spoke eloquently of his uncle's mentorship. Sir Charles Pemberton, with surprising grace, praised his rival's integrity. Even the Foreign Secretary himself, a thin, gray man with the exhausted air of one perpetually burdened, offered a few words of commendation. Through it all, Poirot observed, his green eyes moved from face to face, cataloging reactions, noting who wept, who did not, who watched others watching. I followed his gaze as best I could, but the subtleties escaped me. When the formal proceedings concluded, the guests dispersed into smaller groups, some to the library for port and cigars, others to the drawing room for coffee and continued conversation. Poirot touched my arm. The servants, Hastings. They see everything and are seen by no one. Come. We slipped through a service door and found ourselves in a narrow corridor, plainly decorated, that ran parallel to the main rooms. At its end, a staircase led down to the kitchen regions. Sounds of activity drifted up, the clatter of dishes, murmured voices, the organized chaos of a household managing a major event. A young housemaid emerged from a doorway, carrying a tray of empty glasses. She started at the sight of us, nearly dropping her burden. "Beg pardon, sirs. You shouldn't be back here." "Forgive the intrusion, mademoiselle." Poirot's manner was gentle, unthreatening. "I am Hercule Poirot. Lady Blackwood has asked me to look into certain matters concerning Sir Reginald's death. Might I have a word?" The girl, she could not have been more than 20, glanced nervously toward the kitchen stairs. "I really shouldn't, sir. Mrs. Thornton, that's the housekeeper. She's very particular about staff talking to guests. Just a few questions. You were here the night Sir Reginald died?" "Yes, sir." Her voice dropped. "I was the one who heard Lady Blackwood scream." "Tell me what you observed." The maid set down her tray on a nearby windowsill, her young face troubled. "I was turning down the beds upstairs, Sir Reginald's and Lady Blackwood's, in the east wing. It was just after 11, I think. Suddenly, I heard a terrible cry from below. Lady Blackwood's voice, screaming for help. "And you went to investigate?" "I ran downstairs as fast as I could. By the time I reached the study, Mr. Thornton was already there, the butler, sir, and Lady Blackwood was on her knees beside Sir Reginald. He was slumped over his desk, not moving." She shuddered. "I'll never forget his face. It was twisted, like he'd died in terrible pain." "Did you notice anything else? Anything out of place in the study?" The girl hesitated. "There was the window, sir." "The window?" It was open, just a crack, but enough to let in the cold. Sir Reginald hated drafts. Everyone knew that. He never opened windows, especially at night. But that evening, the study window was definitely open. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "You are certain of this?" "Yes, sir. I noticed because of the curtain. It was moving slightly in the breeze. I remember thinking it was strange." "Was the window still open when the doctor arrived?" I don't know, sir. Everything was so confused. Mr. Thornton sent me to wake the other servants and then to fetch Dr. Hartley. By the time I returned, the room was full of people." "One more question, mademoiselle. Earlier that evening, between, let us say, 9 and 11 o'clock, did you observe anyone going to or from Sir Reginald's study?" The maid's expression shifted. Fear crept into her eyes. "Please," Poirot said softly, "whatever you tell me will be treated in confidence. I saw Miss Cross." The words came reluctantly. "Around 10 o'clock, perhaps a little after, she was coming down the main staircase from the direction of the study. She looked upset, sir, like she'd been crying." "Anyone else?" "Mr. Marcus left earlier, around 8, I think. He was dressed for dinner out. And there was—" She stopped abruptly. "Yes?" "Nothing, sir. I didn't see anyone else." But she was lying. I could see it in the way her eyes dropped, the sudden tension in her shoulders. Poirot saw it too. "Mademoiselle," he said, his voice infinitely gentle, "you are protecting someone. I understand the impulse. Loyalty to one's employers is admirable. But if Sir Reginald was murdered, the killer must be found. Justice must be served." Tears welled in the girl's eyes. "I could lose my position, sir. Mrs. Thornton said we weren't to gossip about that night. I give you my word that nothing you tell me will be traced back to you." She was silent for a long moment, clearly wrestling with herself. Finally, almost inaudibly, she spoke. "Dr. Hartley. I saw him leaving through the garden door at 9:30, almost an hour before Lady Blackwood called for him. I felt my jaw drop. The doctor was here, before the death? I thought he'd come for a regular visit. He comes often to check on Lady Blackwood's nerves. But he didn't come in through the front door, and he didn't speak to anyone. Just slipped out through the garden." She wiped her eyes. "I didn't think anything of it at the time, but now?" "Now you wonder," Poirot completed. "Yes, sir." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I wonder very much indeed." We returned to the main rooms through a different service entrance, emerging near the library where the gentlemen had gathered for port. Poirot was silent, his brow furrowed in thought. "Hartley," I said, keeping my voice low. "He was here. He could have administered poison, yes, and then returned later to pronounce death by natural causes, covering his own crime." Poirot shook his head slowly. "It is possible, Hastings, most possible, but we must not leap to conclusions. The maid saw him leaving, not entering the study. There may be an innocent explanation." "Such as?" "Perhaps he came to see Lady Blackwood, as she suggested. Perhaps he was consulting with Sir Reginald on a private matter. Perhaps—" He trailed off, his eyes suddenly fixed on something across the room. I followed his gaze. Through the open library door, I could see Dr. Hartley standing alone by the fireplace. He was staring into the flames, his face illuminated by the dancing light, and his expression was one of profound and unmistakable fear. "Or perhaps," Poirot murmured, "he is not the killer at all, but merely another piece on a very complicated board, one who knows something he wishes he did not. What do we do now?" "Now, mon ami, we speak to the butler. Mr. Thornton has been with this household for many years. He was first on the scene after the scream, and he holds a key to the study. Poirot adjusted his cuffs with precise movements. In my experience, Hastings, the butler always knows more than he tells. It is time to discover exactly how much more. Chapter 4. The Private Study. We found Mr. Thornton in the butler's pantry, a small immaculate room adjacent to the dining room, where the household silver was kept under lock and key. He was supervising the cleaning of the evening's crystal, his movements precise and economical, as he inspected each glass before allowing it to be returned to its cabinet. He was a man of perhaps 60, tall and thin, with the kind of face that seemed designed to express nothing at all. His gray hair was cropped short, his posture military straight, and his eyes, dark, watchful, missed nothing. Monsieur Poirot. His voice was as controlled as his appearance. I was informed you might wish to speak with me. I am at your disposal. You are most kind, Monsieur Thornton. I understand you were the first to reach Sir Reginald after Lady Blackwood's cry for help. That is correct, sir. Thornton dismissed the junior footman with a subtle gesture, leaving us alone among the gleaming silver. I was in the dining room, overseeing preparations for the following day, when I heard her ladyship scream. I reached the study within moments. Describe what you found. Sir Reginald was slumped over his desk, his right hand clutching his chest. Lady Blackwood was kneeling beside him, attempting to rouse him. I could see immediately that he was beyond help, his color, the stillness of his body. I sent a footman for Dr. Hartley and attempted to comfort her ladyship. The study? Was anything disturbed? For the first time, something flickered in Thornton's impassive eyes. The room was in order, sir. Papers on the desk, as usual. The lamp still burning. A glass of brandy, half consumed. Nothing out of place? Nothing missing? I am not in the habit of examining Sir Reginald's private papers, sir. But you noticed the window was open. Thornton's composure cracked just slightly. You have been speaking to the staff. I have been gathering information. The window, Monsieur Thornton, was it open? A long pause. Yes, it was open perhaps 2 inches. I closed it myself before the doctor arrived. The draft was disturbing the papers on the desk. You closed it. Poirot's voice was soft but carried an edge. Before anyone else could observe it, before any investigation could be made. There was no investigation to be made, sir. Sir Reginald had suffered a heart attack. The open window was an irrelevance, a lapse in the household routine, nothing more. And yet Sir Reginald, by all accounts, despised drafts. He would never have opened that window himself. Thornton said nothing. Who opened it, Monsieur Thornton? I do not know, sir. But you suspect. The butler's jaw tightened. I do not engage in speculation. Poirot changed tactics, his manner becoming almost conversational. You have been with the Blackwood household for many years. 32 years, sir. I began as a junior footman. Then you knew Sir Reginald better than almost anyone. You observed his habits, his routines, his visitors. You knew who came and went from this house. It is my responsibility to know such things. Then tell me, who visited Sir Reginald on the evening of his death, apart from the family members we have already discussed? Thornton hesitated. The internal struggle was visible. Loyalty to his employers warring with something else. Conscience, perhaps, or fear. Dr. Hartley called briefly around 9:30. He came through the garden entrance and left the same way. I assumed it was a private medical consultation." "You assumed, but you did not announce him?" "Dr. Hartley has been attending this family for 20 years, sir. He has standing permission to come and go as needed." "And he went directly to Sir Reginald's study?" "I cannot say with certainty. I was occupied with other duties. But you knew he was in the house." "I saw him pass through the garden corridor. That is all." Poirot nodded slowly. "Anyone else?" Another hesitation, longer this time. "There was a telephone call. Around 8 o'clock, Sir Reginald took it in his study. I could not hear the conversation, but when he emerged briefly afterward, he seemed agitated." "Did he say anything?" "Only that he was not to be disturbed for the remainder of the evening, under any circumstances." Thornton's voice dropped. "Those were his last words to me, sir, his very last words." "And you obeyed his instructions?" "I am a butler, Monsieur Poirot. Obedience is my profession." We left Thornton to his silver and made our way to the study itself. Lady Blackwood had given Poirot permission to examine the room, and a footman escorted us to the heavy oak door at the end of the ground-floor corridor. "This is it, sir. Shall I—" "That will be all. Thank you." The footman withdrew, and Poirot produced the key Lady Blackwood had provided. The lock turned smoothly, and we stepped into the room where Sir Reginald Blackwood had spent his final hours. It was a thoroughly masculine space: dark wood paneling, leather armchairs, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with volumes on history, diplomacy, and international law. A massive desk dominated the center of the room, positioned to face the door. Behind it, heavy velvet curtains framed the window that overlooked the rear garden. The curtains were drawn now, but I could see where they had been disturbed. A slight unevenness in their hang that spoke of recent handling. "The window," I said. "Précisément." Poirot moved to the curtains and drew them back, revealing a tall sash window. He examined the frame carefully, producing a small magnifying glass from his pocket. "Observe, Hastings, the latch." I peered at the brass fitting. "It's scratched." "More than scratched. It has been forced from the outside." Poirot's finger traced the marks. "Someone opened this window recently. The damage is fresh." "The killer's entry point?" "Or exit, or both." He turned to survey the room. "Now, let us see what else this study can tell us." The desk was orderly, papers stacked neatly, pens arranged with military precision, a leather blotter positioned exactly in the center. But there were signs of disturbance if one knew where to look. A drawer slightly ajar. A paperweight moved from its usual position, judging by the dust marks on the surface. Poirot seated himself in Sir Reginald's chair and began a systematic examination of the desk drawers. Most contained routine correspondence, financial documents, official papers bearing the Foreign Office seal. But the bottom right drawer, the one Lady Blackwood had mentioned, the one that held the mysterious letter, was empty. "Cleaned out," I observed. "And recently. You see the dust patterns, Hastings? This drawer was full until very recently. Someone has removed its entire contents. The killer, covering their tracks. Perhaps, or someone else, protecting their own secrets, or Sir Reginald's." Poirot's eyes swept the room, taking in every detail. "The brandy, Hastings. Where was it kept?" I spotted a crystal decanter on a side table near the fireplace, accompanied by several glasses. "There, I imagine." Poirot rose and examined the arrangement. The decanter was perhaps half full of amber liquid. He unstoppered it and inhaled delicately. Fine cognac, nothing unusual in the scent. He held it up to the light. Clear, no sediment. If poison was administered, it was not through the decanter. Then how? The glass. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Dr. Hartley mentioned a glass on the desk, half empty. If the poison was placed in that specific glass, not the decanter, then only Sir Reginald would have been affected. But the glass was washed, the evidence destroyed. By the servants, following normal routine. Or by someone who wished to ensure that no trace remained. Poirot began to pace, his little gray cells visibly at work. Consider the sequence of events, Hastings. Sir Reginald receives a telephone call at 8 o'clock that agitates him greatly. He orders that he not be disturbed. At 9:30, Dr. Hartley visits secretly, entering through the garden. At some point, the study window is opened, or forced from outside. At 10 o'clock, Miss Cross is seen leaving the area, visibly upset. And at 11 o'clock, Sir Reginald cries out and dies. It's a crowded timeline. Too crowded, perhaps. Too many visitors, too many opportunities. He stopped pacing. Unless some of these visits are connected. Unless we are seeing not random events, but a coordinated plan. I frowned. A conspiracy? More than one person involved? It is possible. Consider, the window forced from outside suggests an intruder. But Dr. Hartley's secret visit suggests internal knowledge. Miss Cross's distress suggests emotional involvement. And the vanished letter, the cleaned-out drawer, these suggest deliberate concealment by someone with access to the household. Marcus Blackwood has a key to this study, as does Mr. Thornton, and Dr. Hartley has free run of the house. Poirot shook his head. We have too many suspects, Hastings, and too few facts. We need more information. His eye fell on the bookshelves, and he moved toward them with sudden purpose. Sir Charles Pemberton mentioned that Sir Reginald had become obsessed with an old case, the Marchetti affair from 1909. If Sir Reginald was investigating this matter, he may have kept records. We searched the shelves systematically. Poirot's eye for detail was remarkable. He spotted a section of books that had been recently disturbed, their spines slightly misaligned with their neighbors. Here, he pulled out a volume on Mediterranean trade routes. Behind it, wedged into the gap between books and wall, was a thin leather folder. Mon Dieu. Poirot's voice was barely a whisper as he opened the folder. Hastings, look at this. Inside were a handful of documents, old, yellowed with age, newspaper clippings in Italian, a typed memorandum bearing the Foreign Office crest, dated March 1909, and a photograph. The photograph showed 3 men standing before what appeared to be an Italian villa. 2 I did not recognize, one young and dark-haired, the other older, with a luxuriant mustache, but the third— Good God, I breathed. That's a young Dr. Hartley. Indeed it is. Poirot examined the photograph closely. And the man beside him, the one with the mustache, I believe this is Count Marchetti himself, the diplomat who died under suspicious circumstances. Hartley knew Marchetti? More than knew him, it would seem. They were photographed together, in what appears to be a friendly context. Poirot turned the photograph over. On the back, in faded pencil, someone had written, Rome, February 1909. Before the fall. Before the fall, I repeated. What does that mean? It means, Hastings, that Dr. Edmund Hartley has not been entirely truthful with us. He claimed to be merely the Blackwood family physician, a man of medicine, not politics. Yet here he is, in Italy, with a diplomat who would die under mysterious circumstances mere weeks after this photograph was taken. Poirot slipped the folder into his jacket. We must speak with Dr. Hartley again, and this time he will tell us the truth, or face the consequences of his deception. You think he killed Sir Reginald to hide his connection to the Marchetti affair? I think, mon ami, that the past has reached out its cold hand to touch the present. 15 years ago, something happened in Rome, something that was hushed up, buried, forgotten. But Sir Reginald remembered. He began to investigate, and now he is dead. Poirot's eyes were hard. The question is not merely who killed Sir Reginald Blackwood, but why the truth about Count Marchetti must remain hidden, even now, after all these years. A sound from the corridor made us both freeze. Footsteps approaching the study door. Poirot moved with surprising swiftness, pocketing the folder and positioning us near the bookshelves, as if we had been examining the titles. The door opened to reveal Marcus Blackwood, his handsome face arranged in an expression of polite inquiry. Monsieur Poirot, I was told you were examining my uncle's study. His eyes swept the room. Finding anything interesting? Merely familiarizing myself with Sir Reginald's habits, Poirot replied smoothly. A man's study reveals much about his character. Indeed. Marcus's gaze lingered on the bookshelf where we had found the hidden folder. My uncle was a private man. He kept his secrets close. All men have secrets, Monsieur Blackwood. The question is whether those secrets are worth killing for. Something flickered in Marcus's eyes. Fear, anger, recognition. I hope you find what you're looking for, Monsieur Poirot, he said, quietly, though I suspect you may not like what you discover. He withdrew, closing the door behind him with a soft click. A warning, I said, or a confession. Poirot adjusted his cuffs. Come, Hastings, we have much to do, and I fear we are running out of time. Chapter 5. The Unraveling Thread. The following morning broke gray and sullen over London, the sky heavy with the promise of rain. Poirot and I took an early breakfast at Whitehaven Mansions, my friend unusually silent as he consumed his precisely prepared coffee and croissants. I knew better than to interrupt his thoughts. The little gray cells were at work, sifting through the evidence we had gathered, searching for the thread that would unravel the mystery. At precisely 9 o'clock, he set down his cup with an air of decision. Hastings, we must pay a visit to the Foreign Office. There is a man there, an archivist of my acquaintance, who may be able to shed light on this Marchetti affair. The past, it holds the key to the present. I am certain of it. And Dr. Hartley? Shouldn't we confront him with the photograph? In time, mon ami. But first, we must understand what we are dealing with. To accuse without evidence is folly. To accuse without understanding is worse. He rose from the table. Come, the archives await. The Foreign Office was a monument to imperial confidence, grand columns, marble floors, and an atmosphere of hushed importance that seemed to seep from the very walls. Poirot's contact, a wizened little man named Finch, who presided over the Historical Records Department, greeted us with the nervous enthusiasm of one who rarely received visitors. Monsieur Poirot, an honor, sir, a true honor. How may I assist you? The Marchetti affair, Monsieur Finch, Rome, 1909. I require everything you have. Finch's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. Ah, the Marchetti business. Yes, I remember it. Nasty affair. Very hush-hush at the time. What can you tell me? The archivist glanced around, as if fearing eavesdroppers in his own domain. Count Alessandro Marchetti was an Italian diplomat, a rising star in their foreign service. He was involved in negotiations regarding British interests in the Mediterranean, very sensitive matters. And he died under suspicious circumstances. Poisoned, they said, at a dinner party at the British Embassy in Rome. The Italians were furious, accused us of assassination, though nothing was ever proven. Finch shook his head. It nearly caused a diplomatic rupture. The whole thing was buried as quickly as possible. Official verdict was natural causes, heart failure, ironically enough. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Heart failure. The same verdict as Sir Reginald Blackwood. I hadn't made that connection. Finch's face paled. Good heavens, you don't think... I think many things, Monsieur Finch. Who was present at this dinner party? Who handled the investigation? The archivist scurried to a filing cabinet, his fingers dancing through rows of yellowed folders. Here, the guest list from that evening, and the internal report. Strictly confidential, you understand. I really shouldn't be showing you this. Your discretion is appreciated. The guest list was typed on heavy paper, now brittle with age. I scanned the names, mostly Italian aristocrats and British diplomats, but 3 names leaped out at me. Sir Reginald Blackwood, diplomatic attaché, Dr. Edmund Hartley, embassy physician Miss Cordelia Ashworth. Lady Blackwood, I breathed. She was there too, before her marriage. Ashworth must have been her maiden name. Précisément. Poirot's voice was soft. 3 people who were present at Count Marchetti's death are connected to the Blackwood household. 2 of them are still alive. And 1 is now dead, under remarkably similar circumstances. Poirot turned to the internal report. His eyes moved rapidly across the faded typescript, and I saw his expression sharpen. Listen to this, Hastings. The investigation into Count Marchetti's death was conducted by Sir Reginald Blackwood, with medical assessment provided by Dr. Edmund Hartley. Despite evidence suggesting the possibility of foul play, including testimony from several witnesses regarding the Count's symptoms prior to collapse, the official verdict of natural causes was deemed appropriate given the diplomatic sensitivities involved. They covered it up. They covered something up. But what? Poirot continued reading. A minority report was filed by 1 member of the investigating team, suggesting that the Count may have been poisoned by an agent introduced into his wine glass. This report was suppressed at the highest levels. Who filed the minority report? Poirot's face was grim. The report does not say, but I can guess. He turned to another document in the folder, a personal memorandum, handwritten. This is addressed to the Foreign Secretary of the time. It reads, I can no longer in good conscience remain silent regarding the Marchetti matter. The evidence points clearly to murder, and I have reason to believe the perpetrator is known to us. I request permission to reopen the investigation. It is signed by Sir Reginald Blackwood himself. He wanted to reveal the truth? So it would seem. But the request was denied. The memorandum bears a stamp. Matter closed. No further action. Poirot closed the folder. Sir Reginald knew that Count Marchetti was murdered. He knew who did it, and for 15 years he remained silent. But something changed. Something made him begin to investigate again. The letter, the one that frightened him. Yes, someone sent him a letter that forced him to act, and that action cost him his life. We left the Foreign Office with more questions than answers, but the shape of the mystery was beginning to emerge. As our taxi carried us back toward Mayfair, Poirot summarized his thoughts. Consider, Hastings, Count Marchetti was poisoned in 1909. Sir Reginald investigated but was ordered to cover it up. He knew the killer's identity but remained silent. Now, 15 years later, he receives a threatening letter and begins to reinvestigate. Shortly afterward, he dies. Poisoned, I am now certain, in a manner designed to appear as natural as Marchetti's death. The same killer? Or someone protecting the original killer, someone who could not allow the truth to emerge after all these years? Poirot stroked his mustache. Dr. Hartley was at both deaths. He pronounced both men dead of heart failure. He is, as the English say, up to his neck in this affair. Then he's our murderer. Perhaps, but consider, if Hartley killed Marchetti, why would Sir Reginald protect him for 15 years? They were not friends, by all accounts, merely professional associates. Blackmail. Possible, but there is another explanation, one that I find more elegant. Poirot's eyes were distant. What if Sir Reginald was not protecting the killer but someone else, someone he loved? The implication struck me like a thunderbolt. Lady Blackwood, she was there that night. She was Miss Cordelia Ashworth, an unmarried young woman attending her first diplomatic function. Poirot nodded slowly. And she married Sir Reginald Blackwood within 6 months of Count Marchetti's death. You think she killed Marchetti? I think, Hastings, that we must speak with Lady Blackwood again, and this time we must ask her about Rome. But Lady Blackwood was not at home when we arrived at Blackwood House. The footman who answered informed us that her ladyship had departed early that morning for an appointment and was not expected back until evening. Curious timing, I muttered as we stood on the pavement. Most curious. Poirot was about to suggest our next move when a figure emerged from the house. Miss Helena Cross, dressed for going out, her face pale and drawn. Miss Cross, Poirot stepped into her path. A moment of your time, if you please. She hesitated, clearly reluctant, but something in Poirot's manner prevented her from refusing. I have only a few minutes, Monsieur Poirot. I'm expected elsewhere. Then I shall be brief. The night Sir Reginald died, you were seen leaving the study area at 10 o'clock, visibly distressed. You told us you saw a figure in the corridor, but you did not tell us why you were there in the first place. Helena's composure crumbled. I came to speak with Sir Reginald, about Marcus, about our engagement. You intended to plead your case? To ask for his blessing? To demand it? Her voice hardened. I was tired of hiding, tired of sneaking around like criminals. Marcus and I love each other. Sir Reginald had no right to keep us apart. And what happened when you spoke with him? That's just it. I didn't speak with him. The study door was closed and I could hear voices inside. Sir Reginald was arguing with someone, a man's voice raised in anger. Poirot went very still. Could you identify the voice? I thought it was Dr. Hartley, but I couldn't be certain. The door was thick, and they were speaking rapidly. What were they arguing about? I only caught fragments, something about the past, and leaving well enough alone. And then Sir Reginald shouted something about the truth and justice. Helena shuddered. The other man said, I'll never forget this. He said, if you pursue this, you will destroy everything, including yourself. A threat. Yes, I was frightened. I left without knocking. Tears welled in her eyes. An hour later, Sir Reginald was dead. If I had intervened, if I had raised the alarm, you could not have known, mademoiselle, Do not torture yourself with what-ifs." Poirot's voice was gentle. "One more question. The voice you heard threatening Sir Reginald. You said you thought it was Dr. Hartley, but you also said you couldn't be certain. Why?" Helena hesitated. Because it could have been Marcus. They have similar voices, the same educated tones, the same precise diction. I wanted it to be Dr. Hartley. I still want it to be, but I cannot swear to it." She pulled away from us, her eyes wild with fear and guilt. "I have to go. Please, find the truth, Monsieur Poirot, for all our sakes." She hurried down the street, disappearing around the corner before I could speak. "The plot thickens," I said grimly. "Either Hartley or Marcus was threatening Sir Reginald an hour before his death. And Miss Cross, who loves Marcus, cannot bring herself to definitively clear him." Poirot began walking, his pace brisk despite his distaste for physical exertion. "We must find Dr. Hartley, Hastings. The time for polite inquiries has passed. He will answer our questions, or I shall know the reason why." Dr. Hartley's surgery was located in a quiet Mayfair street, a discreet brass plaque the only indication of his profession. A nervous receptionist informed us that the doctor was with a patient, but would be available shortly. We waited in an anteroom decorated with medical texts and anatomical drawings. Poirot sat motionless, his eyes fixed on nothing, his mind clearly elsewhere. I fidgeted with my hat, impatience gnawing at me. 20 minutes later, Dr. Hartley emerged, ushering out an elderly woman with elaborate courtesy. When he saw us, his face went gray. "Monsieur Poirot, I was not expecting you." "No, I imagine you were not." Poirot rose. "We must speak, Dr. Hartley, in private, about Rome." The single word struck Hartley like a physical blow. He swayed slightly, then recovered, gesturing toward his consulting room with a hand that trembled. "Very well. Come in." The consulting room was orderly, professional, unremarkable. Hartley closed the door behind us and leaned against it as if for support. "How much do you know?" "Enough." Poirot produced the photograph from his pocket. "You were in Rome in 1909. You knew Count Marchetti. You were present when he died, and you helped Sir Reginald Blackwood cover up his murder." Hartley closed his eyes. 15 years. I thought it was buried forever." "The truth is never truly buried, Doctor. It merely waits. And now Sir Reginald is dead. Poisoned, I believe, just as Marchetti was poisoned. You were in Blackwood House the night he died. You were heard arguing with him, threatening him." "I didn't kill him." The words burst out with desperate force. "I swear to you, Poirot, I did not kill Reginald Blackwood. Yes, I argued with him. Yes, I begged him to let the past remain buried. But when I left that study, he was alive." "Then tell me the truth, all of it. Who killed Count Marchetti?" Hartley was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. Cordelia Ashworth, Lady Blackwood. She poisoned Marchetti's wine." He raised his eyes to meet Poirot's. "And God help me, I helped her cover it up." Chapter 6, The Gathering Storm. The silence in Dr. Hartley's consulting room was absolute. Even the ticking of the mantel clock seemed to have stopped, suspended in the weight of his confession. "You had better tell me everything," Poirot said quietly. "From the beginning." Hartley moved to his desk and lowered himself into the chair like a man twice his age. His hands, I noticed, were no longer trembling. The relief of confession had steadied them. "It was February 1909. I was young then, barely 30, serving as the embassy physician in Rome. A prestigious posting, full of promise. I had my whole career ahead of me." He laughed bitterly. How quickly things can change. You met Count Marchetti. We all did. He was charming, brilliant, ambitious, the golden boy of Italian diplomacy. He was also engaged in negotiations that would have significantly disadvantaged British interests in the Mediterranean. Sir Reginald was tasked with managing the situation. Managing? Delaying, obfuscating, finding leverage. Hartley's voice hardened. The usual diplomatic games, but Marchetti was too clever. He was winning, and then he made a fatal mistake. Which was? He fell in love with Cordelia Ashworth. I felt my breath catch. Poirot merely nodded, as if this confirmed something he had already suspected. Cordelia was 22 years old, Hartley continued. Beautiful, intelligent, the daughter of a minor diplomat. She had come to Rome as a companion to the ambassador's wife. Marchetti was enchanted by her. He pursued her relentlessly. And she reciprocated. At first, yes, she was flattered by his attention. What young woman wouldn't be? He was handsome, powerful, romantic. They began a secret affair. Hartley paused. But then she discovered the truth about him. What truth? Marchetti was not merely a diplomat. He was also a spy, feeding information to certain parties who wished to destabilize British influence in the region. He had been using Cordelia to gather intelligence, asking her innocent questions about embassy affairs, encouraging her to share gossip about diplomatic movements. Hartley's face twisted. When she realized how she had been manipulated, she was devastated and furious. Furious enough to kill. Yes, the word fell like a stone. The dinner party at the embassy was Marchetti's final triumph. He had just concluded a negotiation that would have severely damaged British interests. He was celebrating, gloating. Cordelia could not bear it. How did she do it? Potassium cyanide. She had obtained it weeks earlier, told the embassy chemist she needed it for a photographic hobby. That night, during the confusion of the dinner service, she slipped it into Marchetti's wine glass. Hartley closed his eyes. He died within minutes. The symptoms were consistent with heart failure, if one did not look too closely. And you did not look too closely. I was the embassy physician. I was called to examine the body. I knew immediately that something was wrong. The bitter almond scent on his lips, the way his muscles had seized. But by then, Cordelia had confessed to me. She was hysterical, terrified. She begged me to help her. Why did you agree? Hartley was silent for a long moment. Because I loved her, he said finally. I had loved her since the moment I first saw her. I would have done anything for her, even this. And Sir Reginald? He knew the truth? He discovered it during his investigation. There was evidence, the purchase of the cyanide, witness testimony placing Cordelia near Marchetti's table at the critical moment. But he also saw an opportunity. Hartley's voice turned bitter. Cordelia was vulnerable, grateful, desperate for protection. Reginald offered her all three, in exchange for her hand in marriage. He blackmailed her into matrimony. He called it an arrangement of mutual benefit. She would have the protection of his name and position. He would have a beautiful, well-connected wife who could never leave him, never defy him, never reveal his own role in suppressing the truth. Hartley laughed, a sound devoid of humor. They were married within 6 months. I was not invited to the wedding. But you remained connected to the family. Reginald made certain of that. He kept me close, as family physician, as confidant, as a fellow conspirator in silence. He knew that as long as we were bound together by this secret, None of us could betray the others. A web of mutual destruction. Precisely. Hartley leaned forward. For 15 years, we maintained the pretense. Cordelia played the dutiful wife. I played the loyal doctor. Reginald played the distinguished diplomat. We never spoke of Rome, never acknowledged what had happened. It was as if Marchetti had never existed. Until recently. Until the letter. Hartley's face darkened. 3 weeks ago, Reginald received a letter, anonymous, typewritten. It contained details about Marchetti's death that only someone who had been there could know. And it made a demand. £100,000, or the truth would be revealed. Blackmail. Yes, but Reginald refused to pay. He said he was tired of living under the shadow of the past. He wanted to confess, to clear his conscience before he died. Hartley shook his head. I begged him to reconsider. The scandal would destroy us all, Cordelia most of all. She would hang for murder. But Reginald was adamant. He said justice had waited long enough. And so you argued with him, the night he died. I went to Blackwood House to make one final plea. I told him that if he pursued this course, he would destroy everything we had built. He said that some things deserved to be destroyed. Hartley's voice cracked. Those were the last words I ever heard him speak. When I left that study, he was alive. I swear it on my life. Poirot was silent for a long moment, his green eyes fixed on Hartley's anguished face. The blackmail letter, he said finally. Do you know who sent it? No. The letter was typewritten, posted from central London. No identifying marks. Reginald showed it to me, hoping I might recognize something, but it was completely anonymous. Yet someone knew the truth, someone who was there in Rome, or who had access to information about what happened. There were others at that dinner party. Servants, minor diplomats, guests. Any of them might have seen something, suspected something. Hartley spread his hands. After 15 years, I had almost convinced myself that we were safe. I was wrong. And Lady Blackwood? Does she know about the blackmail? Hartley hesitated. I don't know. Reginald may have told her, or he may have kept it secret to protect her from worry. He looked up at Poirot with desperate eyes. You must believe me, Monsieur Poirot. I did not kill Reginald. Yes, I had motive. The exposure would ruin me as thoroughly as it would ruin Cordelia. But I am not a murderer. I have spent my life trying to heal people, not harm them. And yet you helped conceal a murder. You falsified a death certificate. You participated in a conspiracy of silence that lasted 15 years. I know. Hartley's voice was barely a whisper. And I have lived with that guilt every day since. But I did not compound my sins by committing another murder. You must believe me. Poirot rose from his chair. What I believe, Dr. Hartley, is not yet relevant. What matters is the truth, and the truth is still incomplete. He moved toward the door. You will remain available for further questioning. You will not attempt to leave London, and you will not warn Lady Blackwood of this conversation. You're going to arrest her, aren't you, for Marchetti's murder? The murder of Count Marchetti is beyond my jurisdiction. It happened 15 years ago, in another country, under another legal system. But the murder of Sir Reginald Blackwood is very much my concern. Poirot's eyes were hard. And I am not yet convinced that Lady Blackwood is innocent of her husband's death. Cordelia? Kill Reginald? Hartley shook his head vehemently. Impossible. She hated him, yes. What wife would not hate a man who had trapped her in a loveless marriage through blackmail? But she would never. She killed once before, Doctor, when she felt betrayed, manipulated, used. You said yourself that she was furious enough to commit murder. Poirot opened the door. Is it so impossible that history might repeat itself? He left without waiting for an answer. I followed, my mind reeling from the implications. Outside, the gray morning had darkened into a threatening afternoon. Storm clouds gathered on the horizon, and the first drops of rain began to fall as we walked back toward the main road. Lady Blackwood, I said finally. She's been lying to us from the start. She came to you claiming to believe her husband was murdered, begging you to investigate. But if she killed him, then she was attempting to direct suspicion elsewhere, to control the investigation by appearing to initiate it. Poirot nodded slowly. It is a clever strategy, Hastings. By engaging me, she appears as the grieving widow seeking justice. Any evidence pointing to her can be dismissed as the desperate maneuverings of the true killer trying to frame her. But she killed Marchetti. Hartley confirmed it. Doesn't that prove? It proves she is capable of murder. It does not prove she committed this particular murder. Poirot stopped walking, his brow furrowed in thought. Consider, Hastings. Lady Blackwood had motive to silence her husband before he could confess and expose her. She had opportunity. She was in the house when he died. But something troubles me. What? The method. Count Marchetti was poisoned with cyanide, a fast-acting, violent poison. Sir Reginald appears to have been poisoned with something more subtle, something that mimicked heart failure. A woman who has killed once would likely use the same method again. It is human nature to repeat what has worked before. Perhaps she learned from her mistake. Cyanide was nearly discovered. This time, she chose something harder to detect. Perhaps. But Poirot did not sound convinced. There is also the matter of the forced window. Lady Blackwood would have no need to enter through the study window. She had free access to the house. Why stage a break-in? To make it look like an outside intruder, to deflect suspicion from the household. Possibly, but it is an unnecessary complication, and there is the blackmail letter to consider. If Lady Blackwood wished to silence her husband, she could simply have killed him. Why send a blackmail demand first? It makes no sense. Unless she didn't send the letter, unless someone else is involved. Précisément. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The blackmail letter is the key, Hastings. Someone knew the truth about Rome. Someone demanded money. And when Sir Reginald refused to pay and threatened to confess instead that someone killed him, not Lady Blackwood, who had everything to lose from exposure, but the blackmailer, who had everything to lose from Sir Reginald's confession. But who? Who else could have known about Marchetti? That is what we must discover. Poirot resumed walking, his pace quickening despite the rain. We must return to Blackwood House. There is one person we have not yet interrogated thoroughly, one person who has been hovering at the edges of this drama, watching, waiting. Marcus Blackwood. No, Marcus is obvious, too obvious. He has motive, yes, but he lacks the crucial element, knowledge of Rome. Poirot shook his head. I am thinking of someone else, someone who has been in the Blackwood household for years, someone who would have had access to Sir Reginald's private papers, his correspondence, his secrets. Understanding dawned. The butler, Thornton. Thornton has been with the family for 32 years, Hastings. He was there before the marriage, before Rome even. A man in his position sees everything, hears everything, knows everything." Poirot's voice was grim. "And he was first on the scene after Sir Reginald's death. He closed the window before anyone could examine it. He had a key to the study. But what would be his motive? That, mon ami, is what we are about to discover." We arrived at Blackwood House as the storm broke in earnest. Rain lashed the windows, and thunder rumbled in the distance. The footman who admitted us seemed nervous, glancing over his shoulder as if expecting something terrible. "Is Mr. Thornton available?" Poirot inquired. "Mr. Thornton is... That is, sir, there's been some trouble. Mr. Thornton has been taken ill. Very suddenly. He's in his room." Poirot and I exchanged glances. "Take us to him, immediately." We followed the footman through the service corridors to the butler's quarters, a modest room at the back of the house, furnished with the sparse dignity appropriate to his station. Thornton lay on his narrow bed, his face ashen, his breathing labored. A maid hovered nearby, wringing her hands. "When did this happen?" Poirot demanded. "Just an hour ago, sir. He was perfectly well this morning. Then he took his usual cup of tea in the pantry, and suddenly he went all pale and started clutching his chest. We thought it was his heart." Poirot moved swiftly to the bedside. He examined Thornton's face, lifted one eyelid, sniffed his breath. Then he straightened, his expression grave. "This man has been poisoned. Hastings, call a doctor. Not Hartley, someone else. And call the police. Inspector Japp, if he is available." "Poisoned," the maid gasped. "But who?" "That is what we intend to discover." Poirot turned to me. "Quickly, Hastings. I fear we may already be too late to save him, but we may yet be in time to catch a murderer." As I hurried to the telephone, one thought echoed in my mind. The killer had struck again, and this time they had made a mistake. They had revealed themselves. The game was reaching its climax. Chapter 7. Justice and Diplomacy. The hours that followed were a blur of activity. A physician, a brisk, competent man named Dr. Ashford, arrived within 20 minutes and immediately set to work on the stricken butler. Inspector Japp of Scotland Yard appeared shortly afterward, his weathered face grim beneath his bowler hat. "Another poisoning, Poirot?" He shook his head. "This household is becoming quite the death trap." "The killer grows desperate, mon ami. Thornton knew something that threatened exposure. He had to be silenced." "Will he live?" Dr. Ashford emerged from the butler's room, wiping his hands. "It's touch and go. The poison, arsenic, I believe, based on the symptoms, was administered in a strong dose. If we'd found him even 30 minutes later, he'd be dead. As it is..." He shrugged. "We'll know by morning." "Arsenic," Poirot murmured. "Not the same poison used on Sir Reginald, I think. That was something subtler, designed to mimic heart failure completely." "Digitalis, perhaps?" Dr. Ashford suggested. "An overdose can cause cardiac arrest. It's virtually undetectable without a thorough autopsy, and I understand no autopsy was performed on Sir Reginald." "At Lady Blackwood's insistence." Poirot's eyes were distant. "Yes, the pieces, they begin to fall into place." Japp pulled out his notebook. "Right then, who had access to Thornton's tea?" "Anyone in the household," I said. "The servants' pantry isn't locked. Anyone could have slipped in." "Including family members. This nephew, Marcus Blackwood, and the secretary, Miss Cross?" "Both had opportunity," Poirot confirmed, "as did Lady Blackwood herself, and Dr. Hartley was in the house this morning. I saw his coat in the entrance hall when we arrived." "Hartley again." Japp's eyes narrowed. That man keeps turning up like a bad penny. He is involved, certainly. But as murderer? Poirot shook his head slowly. I am not convinced. No, Inspector. The killer is someone else. Someone who has been hiding in plain sight. Someone we have overlooked precisely because they wished to be overlooked. Well, don't keep me in suspense. Who is it? Poirot smiled. That small, enigmatic smile I knew so well. Patience, Inspector. First, we must gather all the players for the final act. I request that you summon everyone connected with this case to the drawing room at 8 o'clock this evening. Lady Blackwood, Marcus Blackwood, Miss Helena Cross, Dr. Hartley, and any servants who were present on the night of Sir Reginald's death. A drawing-room confession? Really, Poirot, this isn't one of your theatrical productions. On the contrary, Inspector, that is precisely what it is. The truth, it demands an audience, and I intend to provide one. The storm had passed by evening, leaving the air fresh and cool. The drawing-room of Blackwood House was arranged with formal precision, chairs set in a semicircle before the fireplace, where a modest fire burned despite the season. The portraits of Blackwood ancestors gazed down with their usual stern disapproval. Lady Blackwood sat in a high-backed chair near the window, her face pale but composed. She had dressed carefully in black silk, every inch the dignified widow. Beside her, Marcus Blackwood stood with arms crossed, his handsome features arranged in an expression of studied boredom. Helena Cross perched on a settee nearby, her dark eyes darting nervously between Marcus and the door. Dr. Hartley occupied a chair apart from the others, his medical bag at his feet, his face gray with exhaustion and guilt. Inspector Japp stood by the door, notebook at the ready. 2 constables waited in the corridor outside, and in the center of the room, positioned before the fireplace, like an actor before his audience, stood Hercule Poirot. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the hushed room. "I have asked you here tonight to reveal the truth about the death of Sir Reginald Blackwood, a truth that has been buried beneath layers of deception, loyalty, and fear." "This is ridiculous," Marcus interrupted. "My uncle died of a heart attack. The doctor said so. The death certificate confirms it. What more is there to discuss?" "A great deal, Monsieur Blackwood, beginning with the fact that your uncle was murdered." A collective intake of breath. Lady Blackwood's hands tightened on the arms of her chair, but her face remained impassive. "Sir Reginald was poisoned," Poirot continued, "with digitalis, I believe, a medication that, in excessive doses, causes cardiac arrest indistinguishable from natural heart failure. The poison was administered in his brandy sometime between 9 and 11 o'clock on the night of his death." "That's impossible," Dr. Hartley said weakly. "I examined him. I saw no signs." "You saw what you expected to see, Doctor, what you wanted to see. A man who had lived in fear of exposure for 15 years, suddenly confronted with the possibility that his secret would be revealed. Naturally, you assumed his heart had given out under the strain." Poirot shook his head. "But it was not strain that killed Sir Reginald. It was poison, delivered by someone he trusted, someone he never suspected." "Who?" Lady Blackwood's voice was barely a whisper. "We shall come to that, madame. But first, let us establish the facts." Poirot began to pace, his patent leather shoes clicking softly on the parquet floor. On the evening of his death, Sir Reginald received a telephone call at 8 o'clock that agitated him greatly. He ordered that he was not to be disturbed. At 8:30, his nephew Marcus departed for a dinner engagement. At 9:30, Dr. Hartley arrived secretly through the garden entrance and argued with Sir Reginald in his study. Hartley flinched, but did not deny it. At approximately 10 o'clock, Miss Helena Cross approached the study, heard raised voices, and withdrew without entering. At 11 o'clock, Lady Blackwood heard her husband cry out and found him collapsed at his desk. Poirot stopped pacing. These are the facts as we know them. But there is one fact that has been overlooked. One visitor who has not been accounted for. He turned to face the assembled company. Between Dr. Hartley's departure and Miss Cross's arrival, a window of approximately 30 minutes, someone else entered Sir Reginald's study. Someone who came not to argue or plead, but to kill. Who? Marcus demanded. Thornton? One of the servants? Thornton knew something, yes. That is why he was poisoned this afternoon, an attempt to silence him before he could speak. But Thornton was not the killer. Poirot's gaze swept the room. The killer is someone who has been watching, waiting, gathering information, someone who knew about the events in Rome 15 years ago, someone who sent a blackmail letter demanding £100,000. Blackmail? Lady Blackwood's composure finally cracked. What blackmail? I know nothing of any blackmail. No, madame, you do not. Your husband kept it from you. To protect you, he believed. But the blackmailer knew everything. The death of Count Marchetti, the cover-up, your role in both. They demanded payment, and when Sir Reginald refused, when he declared his intention to confess the truth, they killed him. But who could have known? Hartley's voice was anguished. We were so careful, no one outside the three of us. Ah, but that is where you are wrong, Doctor. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Someone else was present in Rome, someone young, overlooked, considered insignificant, someone who watched and listened and remembered. He turned to face Helena Cross. Someone like a child, the daughter of a minor diplomat, a girl of perhaps 7 or 8, who accompanied her father to Rome in 1909 and witnessed things she did not understand until many years later. Helena's face had gone white. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do, mademoiselle. I think you know exactly what I am talking about. Poirot's voice was gentle but relentless. Your maiden name is not Cross. It is Marchetti. You are the daughter of Count Alessandro Marchetti, the man Lady Blackwood murdered 15 years ago. The silence that followed was absolute. I saw Lady Blackwood sway in her chair, her hand flying to her throat. Marcus stared at Helena as if seeing her for the first time. Dr. Hartley closed his eyes in despair. No, Helena whispered. No, that's not. Your mother was English. That is why you have no accent, why you were able to assume a false identity and insert yourself into the Blackwood household 4 years ago. You came seeking the truth about your father's death, and you found it. Poirot stepped closer. You found letters, documents, whispered conversations. You pieced together the conspiracy that had destroyed your family, and then you decided to make them pay. This is insane, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. Helena couldn't. She wouldn't. She sent the blackmail letter, Poirot continued. She demanded money, not because she wanted it, but because she wanted to force Sir Reginald to reveal the truth. She hoped that exposure would be punishment enough. But when Sir Reginald refused to pay and declared his intention to confess on his own terms, to control the narrative, to minimize Lady Blackwood's guilt, Miss Marchetti realized that justice would never be served through official channels. So she took justice into her own hands. I heard my own voice, heavy with the weight of understanding. She poisoned him. She poisoned him, Poirot confirmed. With digitalis obtained from Dr. Hartley's own medical bag, she had access to it through her position in the household. She administered it in his brandy glass, knowing he always took a glass before bed. And she arranged to be seen near the study, playing the role of the distressed lover, providing herself with an explanation for any suspicious behavior. "The figure I saw leaving the study," Helena said softly, and something in her voice had changed. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. "I described him as tall, fair-haired. I wanted you to suspect Marcus, to believe that greed and ambition had driven him to murder his uncle. Helena!" Marcus's voice was anguished. "How could you? How could I?" She turned on him, her eyes blazing. "Your uncle destroyed my family. My father was murdered. My mother died of grief within the year, and I was sent to live with distant relatives who resented my existence. For 15 years, I had nothing, while the Blackwoods prospered, built their careers on my father's corpse." "Your father was a spy," Lady Blackwood said, her voice trembling. "He used me. He betrayed his country and mine. He deserved a trial." Helena was on her feet now, all pretense abandoned. "He deserved justice, not poison in his wine. You murdered him and never paid the price. You married his killer's accomplice and lived in luxury while I scraped for survival. And now you dare to speak of what he deserved? That is enough." Poirot's voice cut through the rising hysteria. "Miss Marchetti, Miss Cross, you have confirmed your guilt. Inspector Japp, if you please." Japp stepped forward, handcuffs ready. "Helena Cross, I am arresting you for the murder of Sir Reginald Blackwood and the attempted murder of Thomas Thornton. You are not obliged to say anything, but anything you do say—" "Wait." Helena held up her hand. "Before you take me, I want them to know something." Her gaze fixed on Lady Blackwood with burning intensity. "You will not escape justice, madame. The evidence of your crime exists. I made copies of everything I found, letters, documents, Sir Reginald's own handwritten confession. They are with a solicitor, with instructions to release them to the press if anything happens to me." Lady Blackwood's face crumpled. "No. Please. After all these years, the truth will finally be told." Helena smiled, a terrible, triumphant smile. "You took my father from me. Now I take everything from you, your reputation, your freedom, your precious respectability." She turned to Japp. "I'm ready, Inspector." As the constables led her away, she paused at the door and looked back at Marcus. For a moment, something human flickered in her eyes. Regret, perhaps, or the ghost of genuine feeling. "I did love you," she said quietly. "That part wasn't a lie, but some things are more important than love." The door closed behind her, and she was gone. The aftermath was subdued. Lady Blackwood sat motionless, tears streaming down her face. Dr. Hartley attempted to offer comfort but was rebuffed. Marcus stood alone by the window, staring out at nothing. "What happens now?" he asked finally. "To my aunt? To Dr. Hartley?" "That is a matter for the authorities to determine," Poirot replied. "The murder of Count Marchetti occurred 15 years ago, in Italy, under different jurisdiction. Whether charges can be brought after so long. He shrugged. It is unclear, but the scandal, when it breaks, will be considerable. My career is finished, Hartley said dully. Everything I worked for, gone. You participated in the concealment of a murder, Doctor. Actions have consequences. Poirot's voice was not unkind, but neither was it sympathetic. You might have spoken the truth at any time in the past 15 years. You chose silence. That choice has a price. And Sir Reginald, I asked. In the end, he wanted to confess. Does that count for something? It counts for something, mon ami, but it does not undo the years of silence, the corruption of justice, the destruction of a young girl's life. Poirot sighed. Miss Marchetti, Helena, was not wrong about one thing. There are crimes for which the law provides no remedy. When that happens, some people take matters into their own hands. You almost sound sympathetic. I understand her, Hastings. That is not the same as excusing her. He gathered his hat and coat. She committed murder. She must face justice. But I cannot pretend that the people she killed were innocent. They were not. They were merely powerful enough to escape the consequences of their actions. Until now. We left Blackwood House as the clock struck 10. The night air was cool and clean, the storm-washed streets gleaming under the gas lamps. As our taxi carried us toward home, Poirot was silent, his eyes fixed on the passing city. A sad case, I ventured finally. All murder cases are sad, Hastings, but this one. He shook his head slowly. This one is a tragedy of Greek proportions, a sin committed 15 years ago, reaching forward through time to claim more victims. A young woman, twisted by grief and vengeance into a killer herself, and a household built on lies, finally crumbling under the weight of its own deception. Do you think Lady Blackwood will be prosecuted? I think the Foreign Office will do everything in its power to suppress the scandal. The Marchetti affair touches too many important people, too many sensitive negotiations. But Miss Marchetti's documents are with a solicitor, and the press— He smiled thinly. The press loves nothing more than the destruction of the respectable. The truth will out, Hastings. It always does. And justice? Will justice be served? Poirot was quiet for a long moment. Helena Marchetti will hang for murder, or spend her life in prison. Lady Blackwood will live out her days in disgrace, stripped of everything she valued. Dr. Hartley's reputation is destroyed. Marcus Blackwood has lost the woman he loved and discovered that his entire family was built on corruption and lies. He turned to look at me, his green eyes gleaming in the passing lights. Is that justice, Hastings? I do not know, but it is, perhaps, the closest thing to justice that such a tangled affair can provide. The taxi rumbled on through the London night. I thought of Helena Marchetti, clever, determined, broken by loss and driven to terrible acts. I thought of Lady Blackwood, trapped in a marriage built on blackmail, living in fear for 15 years. I thought of Sir Reginald, finally reaching for redemption, only to be struck down before he could achieve it. The diplomat's dilemma, I murmured. Pardon? Sir Reginald. His whole life was about managing crises, smoothing over difficulties, finding compromises. But in the end, he faced a dilemma that had no diplomatic solution. Confess and destroy everything. Stay silent and remain complicit in injustice. I shook my head. There was no way out. No, Poirot agreed softly. There was not. And that, mon ami, is perhaps the greatest tragedy of all. Some situations have no good solutions, only less terrible ones. Sir Reginald chose too late to do the right thing, and the past rose up to claim him before he could make amends. He settled back in his seat, his eyes closing. The little gray cells, they have done their work. Justice, such as it is, will be served. But I confess, Hastings, that tonight I take no pleasure in my success. There are some truths that bring no satisfaction in the telling. The taxi carried us home through the quiet streets, leaving behind a house of shattered illusions and broken lives. The case of the diplomat's dilemma was closed, but its shadows, I suspected, would linger for a very long time. The end.